Well, let's transition into this 53-man roster that was somewhat finalized today. I mean, obviously, as we're speaking right now on the evening of August 27th at 9 p.m., I mean, we have a lot of new information to work with, but the 53-man roster will morph and change before we get to week 1 against the Giants in just a few weeks.
Yeah. But at least we know who, for the most part, who won't be on the 53.
Yeah. So let's start there. Let's start with some surprise cuts. Who are some players that you saw that are on that list of Vikings that are no longer Vikings, at least for now?
I think both of us would agree, maybe not the biggest surprise, but kind of the biggest disappointment as a player so far was they did end up finally pulling the trigger and cutting Lewis Seen.
Yeah.
Kwesi's first round pick. And he had a pretty big injury in his rookie year, but we hadn't seen anything from him before that injury, and I just couldn't figure out other words to say other than that. And he just never really did anything to get opportunities to get on the field. You could argue the safety position is one of the strongest on the team. But when guys like Cam Bynum and Josh Metellus really flourish into starting quality players, it really doesn't give anybody an opportunity, let alone kind of a disappointing rookie or young player.
I saw a tweet somewhere this afternoon that basically just said it was time. It was time for both Lewis Seen and the Vikings. It was time for player and organization to just officially separate themselves. The Vikings need to move on and allow those guys to flourish, and Lewis Seen needs to move on to give himself better opportunities to find success elsewhere. Obviously, the safety room is crowded in Minnesota right now, and that's not a good spot for him to be if he wants playing time and wants a long-term contract. So,
and while I think Lewis Seen not panning out, and to that matter, Andrew Booth, neither of them really panned out to be anything good for the Vikings. Neither of them are Vikings anymore. I think that is a huge negative on Kwesi. But a small silver lining to both of those is that Kwesi did have the cojones to man up and say, you know what, not working. I don't care if you're a first or second round pick. My bad. We can't keep doubling down and throwing bad money at bad players. We got to open up the door for better opportunity players.
And Booth did make the 53-man in Dallas, which is kind of interesting too.
But also, did you see him in the preseason games? He did not look that great. I think he had one ball batted down that was like, oh, that was a good play. But other than that, he just kept getting burned, and he didn't look good. Not to crap on a guy I've never met, and he has no way to, defend himself against me right now. Not that he ever has to. But, I mean, neither of them are NFL quality football players, which neither am I. I can't even kick a ball off the ground 2 feet. So,
Well, anyways, I think you're absolutely right. There's a ton of safety depth already. Neither of those guys fit. And, you wish Lewis Seen the best.
And just like Andrew Booth, Lewis Seen will be on a roster probably in the next couple of days. He'll at least get one more shot. I mean, being a first-round pick does get you a long leash, even if your first team cuts that leash. So somebody will pick him up, and who knows, maybe he just needed a different kind of coach or a different scheme. I don't know. Lewis Seen, he's obviously physically gifted. There's a reason he was a first-round pick. So I don't know.
And he splashed a little bit in the Eagles game. He looked okay, and even the game before that.
Well, the Browns game, he looked really good, for a few plays. But even so, I saw Vikes now they've been putting out some videos of every snap from this player. Before each play, they'll kind of circle that player. Outside of the couple of splash plays for Lewis Seen, he did a lot of walk in, and then the play would end, and he'd kind of jog away. And that's the nature of the safety position too. It's a safety, valve in the back end of the defense. But he didn't look like an elite player.
He's not the magnet to the ball like Harrison Smith or Josh Metellus. Cam Bynum.
But Evan, who is your biggest surprise cut?
I think in addition to Lewis Seen, which is surprising in some ways but also not surprising, Kene Nwangwu
Yeah.
is one of those where you're just like, wow, this guy's been on the team for a few years now. Kind of seemed like he had established himself well in the kick return role and running back 3. And I felt like he had a pretty strong preseason. He looked really good. I think the biggest knock on him is pass protection. He's just a little undersized and doesn't excel in that area. Mm-hmm. But, man, he's got a lot of natural speed, a lot of downhill speed. He gets free. Probably not going to catch him. And that's why he's established himself so well as a kick returner. Mm-hmm. I was really hoping after a solid preseason from him that he'd remain on the roster as he had, but Kwesi and KOC must have seen something different.
Yeah, and that whole running back room, they have 2 bona fide running backs on the roster as of this moment. Again, we know there's no perfect time to record this episode, so we very well may be totally outdated by the time you're listening to this in the next day or so. But I mean, right now you got to think they're going to enter week 1 against the Giants with more than just Aaron Jones and Ty Chandler at the running back position. The only caveat to that is I think you get a lot more contract flexibility if you sign a guy after week 1. So maybe there's a chance they go into week 1 with just those 2 guys, but definitely they won't be going against the 49ers with just those 2 guys. You did make the point, Kene is not the greatest pass protector. And before we started recording, we are CJ Ham fans. I think we're very clear about that. But you even made the point, like, it's kind of interesting that they let Kene go while CJ Ham's still on the roster, a guy that doesn't do a lot of stat sheet plays. He's a good blocker, and he is vital to the team on the plays he's in there, but as far as stat sheet, he's not making a big splash.
And he's definitely a locker room guy. Like, you can definitely see in a lot of the post-game stuff and pre-game stuff, like, he's a very active member of the team. And again, we're big fans of him. I'm not mad that he's on the roster, but it is a chin scratcher a little bit. Like, man, we had so many running back issues last year too, and yet here we are with 2 running backs and a fullback, and the fullback position just isn't really used. And since KOC has taken over the offense, the fullback position has, I feel like, shrunk even more.
Yeah. Now, the caveat to that is the Vikings website, their official website, the article that they put out kind of announcing the 53-man roster, or the initial 53-man roster by Craig Peters, when he lists out that CJ Ham made the team, he had a little sentence here that, you know, some of the good things he did, but he also highlighted that he helped out with pass protection and third downs last season and really throughout his career. But maybe that pass protection ability, at least for the initial 53-man roster, was more valuable to the coaches than Kene's potential breakout ability every once in a while, which we've only seen a couple of times in the preseason outside of the kick return game.
That's a good point. We're going to interrupt, and we're going to pour another beer.
Yeah.
And you can judge me on my pour. You ready?
All right.
So what's the strategy? Just tell me.
Just do it right. I don't know. Just pour your beer right.
Just like that. That's what you told me to do.
Not like a heavy pour. Like, I mean, you're going to get where you need to go with that, but it's going to take you a lot longer.
If you're watching this,
please pull us up on YouTube.
This looks like a root beer float.
It does. I mean, that's the best foam you've had. I don't know. You just gotta pour it right.
Oh, and now I just spilled over the top.
You got paper towels, don't you?
I do, somewhere.
Oh, man.
Or wipes. I've got wipes.
There you go.
Clorox wipes. Not a sponsor.
You know,
Yet.
It's really hard to be an NFL running back. It's also apparently really hard to have a good beer pour. So, just do it right, Ev. I don't know.
I'll keep working on it.
Yeah, plenty of practice. There's always another beer.
I would like to point out that this one of mine was better than yours.
Yeah, I also didn't spill all over the Skol Man Center, though.
Well, at least I clean up my messes.
All right, well, Kene Nwangwu was your surprise cut. My surprise cut, which ultimately isn't a huge world-breaking surprise, I understand that, but for me it was a little surprising. was that Bo Richter didn't make the squad.
Yeah, that was interesting.
Mini sure. J.J. Watt definitely seemed like a good guy, which, being a good guy does not automatically give you a roster spot in the NFL. But he also made some splashy plays. Kind of slowed down after the Raiders game, but still didn't completely disappear. And I know his position group, that outside linebacker group, is a very crowded position group for the Vikings right now. We could list out everybody. We don't have to, but it would have been hard for him to make the team over some of the other guys. And I guess for me, it is a little surprising that he couldn't beat out some of the other guys. He looked the part for a minute.
Can we just take a minute to appreciate how awesome it would have been to have him on the team and be able to talk about okay, on the Richter scale, how awesome was that?
Well, so the dream's not dead, because I do expect him, unless some other team snipes him up and signs him to their 53-man roster, I would fully expect the Vikings to keep him around on the practice squad, which, guys can get elevated to game day rosters from the practice squad. You can, if you're on any practice squad, you can be signed to any team at any moment, so they could be signing him to the 53 anytime. But I would bet money that we have not seen the last of Bo Richter in Minnesota, and that the only reason we wouldn't is if somebody else sniped him.
A couple other names on the cut list that maybe aren't as surprising as Kene or Bo Richter. Dallas Gant.
Yeah, he seemed to be doing really well.
He seemed to have a really good preseason. He has been waived as of today. And Robert Tonyan was another name, kind of a splashy signing, kind of made the rounds through the NFC North. I know you were a little nah, he's probably not as great as we think he is.
He's one of my least surprised cuts. I don't, especially when he got hurt pretty early on. I just didn't expect him really to make the team. I thought he was just a quick we need to fill this tight end room. TJ's not going to be there. Let's get some guys that... Tonyan, he's had some success in the NFL.
Yep.
Obviously, the 1 year he had 10 or 11 touchdowns with the Packers, but really that's it. It hasn't really done anything else. But I know a lot of people are excited about Tonyan. They've seen him do some things. I wish I would have bet on that. I don't know if I could have anywhere, but I would have made money saying he wouldn't have made the team. I guess Deshaun Jones, I'm hoping to see him back, the wide receiver, hoping to see him back on the practice squad. The team obviously liked him a lot. They gave him one of the bigger guarantees for undrafted free agents, not only for just the Vikings, but for everyone around the league. I don't know. I agree with Dallas Gant. I think we'll see him again on the practice squad. And Andre Carter, he made the team last year, but which leads me to believe he might be another practice squad signee.
There you go. All right, what about your surprise, non-cut, or a player that made the team that you're that's... we kind of already talked about C.J. Ham a little bit. We're glad he's on the team, but it is kind of interesting that the Vikings prioritized a fullback / special teams specialist over some other positions. Yeah,
so I guess this kind of doesn't count, but it's the best I can really do. For me at this point, it is Dalton Risner.
Sure.
You signed him, and he was surprisingly available for the second year in a row, pretty deep into free agency. But you signed him to next to nothing, which was surprising in itself. And then we all just expected him to be listed right there as a starter at left guard, and he never really said he was taking first string reps in practice, definitely not in any games. I think he's been low-key injured, as evidenced by he's on the injured reserve right now, which is why this kind of doesn't count, because he's on the team, but he's not on the 53-man roster because he was placed on injured reserve. Now, he's one of the ones that is designated to return, so he has to miss 4 games. But if he's healthy after those 4 games, he can come back onto the 53-man roster. But I don't know, maybe he's just had this injury and the Vikings have known about it, and that's why they were able to get him for so cheap. And that's why he hasn't really been doing anything all offseason that we've seen or heard about. And then obviously he's not, healthy on the 53-man roster right now. So I guess because of the injury, it's not as surprising. But during the whole offseason, it's like, why is he here if you're not using him, especially after he won the starting job last year?
And you kind of helped clarify this for me, because I guess I didn't really fully understand before we started recording tonight. But so players like Dalton Reisner and TJ Hawkinson, and I think, Gabriel Murphy, those guys they have kind of like injury designations. Gabriel Murphy and Dalton Reisner are IR, designated to return, and then TJ is on like a pre-season PUP list, right? Physically unable to perform. So all of those guys have the opportunity to come back and play, and when they do come back, they would displace someone else from the 53-man. So they currently don't count towards the 53-man roster. And let's say TJ Hawkinson comes back, we would expect him to. That means that likely Nick Muse or Johnny Munt is the lowest man on the totem pole, and they get bumped to the practice squad, or they get cut from the team or whatever, and TJ steps into that tight end 1 role. So it is interesting, as you were saying, coming back to Reisner, that he's still kind of around. He doesn't necessarily count towards the 53-man roster, but the Vikings haven't completely severed ties with him either. And that gives me hope that hopefully he'll come back, and we can see what else he can do. Obviously, we know he's a good pass protection guy, and I think he's worth keeping around even for that. Even if who's the guy? I'm now blanking on his name. Blake Brandel. That's it. I just had a brain fart there. But right. Brandel kind of seemingly won the starting job over Reisner. Even though Reisner started most of last year at that position. But yeah, it'd be good to. I would like to see him around, and see him kind of get cycled in on some of those pass protection type of schemes and stuff. So.
And this is, pure speculation on my part, but I really think after this offseason that we've seen of Reisner, I think he's been hurt. I think he may have finished up last season with a nagging injury that maybe needed surgery for him. Maybe he got that. I don't know. Again, pure speculation. I have no idea, no reason to believe this truthfully, but he has had the offseason of guy that is not healthy. We haven't seen him in with the 1s or even the 2s very much that we've heard about. It just seems like maybe he's been banged up and teams have known it, and that's why he wasn't signed anywhere. And then the Vikings may have known about that injury and been comfortable with it, but still took the leverage and signed him to a lower deal. That's the only thing that makes sense in my head, is that he's been hurt this whole time, and everybody's known maybe he's going to be on IR to start the season. But either way, like you said, he played well last year when he came in. He's not a perfect player. He does have weaknesses, but he's still better than probably the likes of Dan Feeney or Michael Juergens. Like, nothing against those guys, but neither of them were the starting left guard for the Vikings last year.
Yeah, I think my surprise uncut, and I'm kind of taking a page out of your book a little bit. Actually, first, let me just say, I feel like you kind of cheated with Dalton Reisner there.
I absolutely did.
Because he's not on the 53-man roster. He's designated to return, perhaps. But the player I'm about to mention did, in fact, make the 53-man roster, and I'm taking a page out of your book because I feel like you've mentioned this player in the last few weeks, kind of like tongue-in-cheek, in jest, like, oh, yeah.
Did I just say his name a minute ago?
Maybe. Fabian Moreau?
Oh, no, I haven't said his name. Okay.
So Fabian Moreau, who's that guy? I don't even know. That's why I'm surprised that he's on the team. And we've already talked about how crowded the defensive back position is. And looking at this list of players that was cut, Nashawn Wright. You've got Duke Shelley, who has history with the team. A couple other guys that okay, are we saying Fabian Moreau is better than him? And I don't know Fabian Moreau's history. I know he was brought in. I think he's played a few seasons in the NFL. I don't think he's a rookie.
Yeah, when we talked to Dustin Baker shortly after Fabian was signed, Dustin Baker seemed to sound like a guy who's heard Fabian's name before. This could just be a blind spot on both of our ends here. Maybe Fabian's more well known than either of us have ever really given him credit for, but he was, if you remember, Fabian, like the day after he was signed, was already getting first string reps with the defense. It's like, oh, this guy, apparently they like him. So yeah.
So I'm looking at him on Pro Football Reference right now. He started most games for Washington in his career in Washington. He's got 7 career interceptions, no touchdowns, and a good amount of tackles, almost 300 tackles on his career.
Okay.
Started in 2017, so he's been in the league for, 6 years now?
Yeah.
Seven seasons.
A guy that has been around the NFL for a little bit, so I agree with you. I'm a little surprised he's on the roster, but, I mean, if he's a solid cornerback, I'm not mad about it. Same with Dwight McGlothern. I think he was the other undrafted free agent that made the team or maybe he was the only one that made the team.
He seemed to splash a little bit in preseason, though. Had some splashy plays, had some good tackles. I think didn't he have a pick six? Or near pick six?
It was almost a pick six. It was like 90-something yard.
Yeah,
against the Browns, yeah.
Yeah, so, like, that is a little more like, oh, okay, like, yeah, he had a few plays. I can't point to a single play of Fabian Moreau.
Moreau, yeah. I think it's just he might be just a guy that isn't an idiot as a cornerback, so he made it over other guys. Not that the other guys like A.J. Green or Duke Shelley are idiots, but...
And to be fair, I'm not mad about it.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful that he can make some plays and maybe get a few picks, maybe get a touchdown on his record. That'd be awesome. But, yeah. And as we've already said, this will likely change.
Oh, yeah. We're probably already outdated. Listeners, you can probably say, like, what are they talking about Moreau for? They signed this other guy. You know, like, it's likely to happen. But it probably won't change a whole lot. They're not going to sign 15 other guys. And they will, officially set their practice squad here in the next couple of days. So, yeah, still exciting roster things to keep an eye on in the next few days. And then we got a game. We're already talking about games here shortly against the Giants. The first NFL game, I think the Ravens and Chiefs play in a Thursday or two. That's coming up.
I haven't even paid attention to that. I know the Vikings schedule pretty well, but I don't know the rest of the NFL schedule.
But either way, we're coming up on week 1. We're super excited. And I think next week, next Skol Hop episode, we're going to have Dustin Baker on, which he can probably give us a little bit more insight in some of these guys on the initial 53, as well as any guys that they end up signing between now and then. And it should be exciting.
It should be exciting, and it will be exciting.